Good evening, welcome to Interesting Talks with Footprints Counselling Service. Today's talk subject is something I've been asked to cover. It's emotional abuse. I've come across this with far more clients than you could imagine. It goes both ways, men to women and vice versa. If you're new to my talk, subscribe to my YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you'll see my videos as they come out. If you're on Facebook, it's every Tuesday evening. The impact of emotional abuse. When emotional abuse is severe and ongoing, the victim may lose their entire sense of self, sometimes without a single mark or bruise. Instead, the wounds are invisible to others. Hidden in self-doubt, worthlessness, self-loathing, the victim feels. In fact, research indicates that the consequences of emotional abuse are just as severe as those from physical abuse. Over time, accusations, verbal abuse, name-calling, criticism, and gaslighting erode a victim's sense of self, so much so they can no longer see themselves realistically. Consequently, the victim begins to agree with the abuser and becomes internally critical. Once this happens, most victims become trapped in an abusive relationship, believing they will never be good enough for anyone else. Emotional abuse can even impact friendships, because emotional abused people often worry about how people truly see them and if they truly like them. Eventually, victims will pull back from friendships and isolate themselves, convinced they no longer have anybody that likes them. What's more, emotional abuse can cause a number of health problems, including everything from depression, anxiety, stomach ulcers, heart palpitations, eating disorders, and insomnia. When examining your relationship, remember that emotional abuse is often subtle. As a result, it can be very hard to detect. If you're having trouble discerning whether or not your relationship is abusive, stop and think about how the interactions with your partner, friend, or even family member make you feel. If you feel wounded, frustrated, confused, misunderstood or depressed, anxious or worthless, anytime you interact, chances are high that the relationship is emotionally abusive. Here are signs that you may be in an emotionally abusive relationship. Keep in mind, even if your partner only does a handful of these things, you are still in an emotionally abusive relationship. Do not fall into the trap of telling yourself it's not that bad and minimizing their behavior. Remember, everyone deserves to be treated with kindness and respect. Emotional or crazy. Refusing to acknowledge or accept your opinions or ideas as valid, dismissing your requests, wants and needs as ridiculous or unmerited, suggesting that your perceptions are wrong or that you cannot be trusted by saying things like you're blowing this out of proportion or you exaggerate, accusing you of being selfish, needy, or materialistic if you express your wants or needs. The expectation is that you should not have any wants or needs. Create chaos. Emotionally abusive people create chaos. Some examples include starting arguments for the sake of arguing, making confusing, contradictory statements, sometimes called crazy making, having drastic mood changes or sudden emotional outbursts, nitpicking about your clothes, your hair, your work, and more. Behaving erratically and unpredictably that you feel like you're walking on eggshells. Use of emotional blackmail. Emotional abusive people using emotional blackmail. Some examples include manipulating, controlling you by making you feel guilty, humiliating you in public or in private, using your fears, values, compassion, or other hot buttons to control you or the situation. Exaggerating your flaws, pointing them out in order to deflect attention from their responsibilities. Denying an event took place or even lying about it. Punishing you by withholding affection or giving you the silent treatment. An abusive relationship is to recognize it's happening. If you're able to identify any aspect of emotional abuse in your relationship, it's important to acknowledge the first and foremost that this is actually happening. By being honest about what is you're experiencing, you begin to take control of your life again. Here are 7 strategies for reclaiming your life that you can put into practice today. Make yourself a priority. When it comes to your mental and physical health, you need to make it a priority. Stop worrying about pleasing the person abusing you. Take care of your needs. Do something that will help you think positive and affirm who you are. Also, be sure to get the appropriate amount of rest. Eat healthy meals. These simple self-care steps go a long way in helping you deal with day-to-day stresses of emotional abuse. Establish boundaries. Firmly tell the abusive person that you may no longer yell at you, call you names, insult you, be rude to you, and so on. Then tell them what will happen if they choose to engage in this behavior. For instance, tell them that if they call you names or insult you, the conversation will be over and you will leave the room. The key is to follow through on your boundaries. Do not communicate boundaries that you have no intention of keeping. Stop blaming yourself. If you have been in an emotional abusive relationship for any amount of time, you may believe there is something severely wrong with you. Why else would someone who says they love you act like this, right? But you are not the problem. Abuse is a choice. So stop blaming yourself for something you have no control over. Realize you can't fix them despite your best efforts. You will never be able to change an emotionally abusive person by doing something different or by acting different. An abusive person makes a choice to behave abusively. Remind yourself that you cannot control their actions and that you are not to blame for their choices. The only thing you can fix or control is your response. Avoid engaging. Do not engage with an abusive person. In other words, if an abuser tries to start an argument with you, begins insulting you, demands things from you, or rages with jealousy, do not try to make explanations, soothe their feelings, or make apologies for things you did not do. Simply walk away from the situation if you can. Engaging with an abuser only sets you up for more abuse and heartache. No matter how hard you try, you will not be able to make things right in their eyes. Build a support network. Stop being silent about the abuse you are experiencing. Talk to a trusted friend, family member, or even a counsellor about what you're experiencing. Take time away from the abusive person as much as possible and spend time with people who love you and support you. This network of healthy friends and confidence will help you feel less lonely and isolated. They can also speak truth into your life and help put things into perspective for you. Work on an exit plan. If your partner, friend, or family member has no intention of changing or working on their poor choices, you will not be able to remain in that abusive relationship forever. It will eventually take a toll on you both, mentally and physically. Depending on your situation, you may need to take steps to end the relationship. Each situation is different, so discuss your thoughts and ideas with a trusted friend, family member, or even a counsellor. Remember, too, the abuse often escalates when the person being abused makes a decision to leave. So be sure to have a safety plan in place should the abuse get worse. This is a very serious issue and is one of those traumas that can be well hidden. But we all have the right to a good and happy life. And when we are not happy at home, there is no chance of being happy in life. If there are children involved, then think, what are we teaching them? If you find this talk useful, share with friends, family, or work colleagues. Do leave comments. If you would like to talk this over with me, contact me at info@footprintscounselingservice@gmail.com. I will get back to you. Until next week, take care, stay safe, do your best to stay positive. Bye for now.